Hey everybody, Stephen Boger here from Pro Physique, and today I want to talk about how to stay full while you diet. Alright everybody, wow, yeah, that's a weird one. How do you stay full while you diet? Stephen, doesn't that kind of defeat the purpose if you're always full when you're trying to diet and lose body fat? Well, no, not necessarily. And the reason that it can be really important that we're able to stay full while we're dieting is because we want to have good adherence. We want to be able to stay as full, as what we call satiated as possible, so that we're able to hit those numbers and we're able to continue seeing that body fat loss. Now, there are definitely a few different things that can absolutely impact our hunger signaling. But let's start with the easiest one first, and that's going to be our food choice. What kind of foods are we choosing to eat? Now, all of you know that I am a huge proponent of flexible dieting and if it fits your macros. Well, what can happen a lot of the time with that is that we are actually utilizing foods that may not be as helpful as we could be choosing. What do I mean by that? Essentially, what that means is a Pop-Tart will keep you less full than maybe a sweet potato or broccoli. And this is where we start talking about the choices between calorie-dense foods and nutrient-dense foods. And the difference is normally going to be the amount of volume that you get with those food choices. As I just said, a Pop-Tart is going to be a smaller portion size than maybe a full baked potato or something else. When we are talking about food choice, we're also looking at a lot of times fiber content of food, and that will help to determine how slowly that food digests. What is the glycemic index? How does it affect your blood sugar and digestion? And those are good things to think about as well. Now, there's definitely a point of diminishing returns when it comes to this, because at a certain point, what we may see is if we get so much fiber, if we get so much volume of hard to digest foods, we actually can become quite bloated. It can actually make us retain water weight within the digestive tract and system. And it's just important to know this. It does not mean that you are no longer losing body fat. You can still lose body fat even while weight stays stable and stagnant for a little bit. And if you notice those things, again, you can always make those changes to that food as well to help with digestion. But if you're bloated, most of the time, you're not as hungry. And remember, for those of us doing physique competitions, there's really only one day where it really truly matters whether or not we're bloated, just in the grand scheme. So if you're looking good for show day, cool. You can utilize those higher fiber, harder to digest foods going into that. Now, in that same breath, we probably don't necessarily need to use the same kind of approach to dieting to an off season. And what I mean by that is that if we're still using a lot of those really high volume foods in our off seasons, that may actually be more detrimental. And it's not that we don't want nutrient dense foods in our off seasons. Yes, we absolutely do. Yes. However, it can absolutely make a big difference in terms of how much food we're able to eat. For me, one of my favorite go-tos in terms of higher volume foods that I like to utilize while dieting is broccoli. And I eat the stalks too. Yes, 100%. However, if I were to try to get in 400, 500 carbs plus of broccoli, or even say broccoli and rice, that might be more difficult than utilizing maybe some things like sauces to add flavor, to change flavor profiles, maybe to my protein sources and things like that. So we want to be aware of that on both ends of the spectrum. Obviously, during a dieting phase, as calories get lower, the amount of nutrient-dense foods that we want to utilize can go higher. And so essentially what happens is instead of having a small plate of food for a set amount of calories, we focus on food choices that will give us a larger volume of food, that will create more of a stretch reflex, fill up the stomach a little bit more, and help us to feel a little bit more satiated and full. And so that's my first Probably easy one. How do we stay full when dieting? Well, we make sure we're eating volume-friendly and nutrient-dense foods. Look at your fiber intake and make sure you're getting enough fiber. My number 2, another really easy one, drink your water. Drinking enough water, one, will help with your digestion, right? We need water to digest food and to push everything through, okay? But it will also help, again, to keep that stomach feeling full. A lot of the times, if we have poor hydration status, one, we may not be actually digesting our food as well as we want, but two, we're letting our stomachs sit empty for a longer period of time. And so one of my tricks that I like to utilize when I'm maybe a little bit hungry and dieting hard, well, I drink more fluids. Just across the board, I'm drinking more fluids, and that can be something that can help as well. Some of the other things that I think a lot of us tend not to pay attention to that will also influence our hunger signaling. Stress. Stress is an absolutely huge one. And that's going to be impacted by a lot of different things. So dieting already impacts it. Yes, it puts your body in a stressful situation. But your psychological stressors also matter. So things that are going on at home, things that are going on at work, your prep. All of those are parts of your stress management. And so when we are stressed, we want to feel not stressed and good. And what's an easy way to do that? Well, humans are social creatures, and a lot of our positive social moments are surrounded by food. So understanding that and knowing that stress management is going to be a huge part of us managing that hunger signaling is really important. And again, we don't want to get to the point where we're already at the end of the spectrum where we're going to go overboard or we're going to risk going off plan, right? What we want to do is be ahead of the ball, right? We want to be ahead of the game. So making sure that we're paying attention to our mindfulness, knowing what do our stress symptoms look like, how are our triggers building up, and seeing when that's happening so that we can address it before it gets to the breaking point. So stress is another really big one. And within that realm, sleep. Sleep is a huge part of how we manage stress, not only psychologically at times, but also physiologically, right? We need to get quality sleep. Our body secretes hormones while we sleep. We heal, we rest, we recover. For me, it's just a good time to shut off, right? My brain thinks all the time. When I'm sleeping, it just kind of shut off, wake up, hello world, how we doing today? So anyways, yes, sleep is super important. So making sure that you're getting enough sleep. And now, the research would show that the amount of sleep that each individual needs differs. That seems to come to a consensus that probably the low end is around 6 hours per night. So making sure that you're not only getting enough sleep, but also restful and quality sleep can be a huge determinant in terms of controlling that hunger signaling and staying full, right? Now, this will be the last one I go over today. And this one definitely, I think, will apply to a lot of us. It's staying busy. You know, my grandma used to always tell me, Stephen, idle hands are the devil's playground. Well, an idle mind is an easy opportunity to really be thinking and food focused. It's actually one of the reasons I liked prepping in college when I was working full-time and going to school full-time. I didn't have as much time to think about being hungry or to deal, to really focus on the food. And so what I found is staying busy during a dieting phase can be super helpful as it doesn't give you as much time to really sit there and focus in and become food focused, to plan out all your post-show meals and do those things. Now, again, you can help manage these things with things like refeeds and diet breaks as well. But if we're just talking about some simple ways to help control your hunger signaling, I think these are some great tips. I'll leave it there, and I'll talk to you guys soon.